Hi, I'm James Himm Mitchell, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's Oracle Outlook. This week, I'm going to be doing a tarot card reading for the week starting April the 4th, 2016, so stay tuned. And here we are with the cards on the table, and the deck assisting me for this week's reading is the Fairy Tarot cards. They're by Doreen Virtue, Radley Valentine, and the artwork is by Howard David Johnson. And so as I do for every one of my weekly general readings, no matter what the deck or the divination system that I'm using, I take the deck in hand and I'm asking Spirit and the angels and the fairies, what do we need to know for the week ahead so that we can make it the best possible week we can experience? So I'm taking the deck and I'm shuffling and I'm looking for cards to stick out. Like this one. The first card is going to represent the beginning of the week. Shuffling again. The next card is going to represent the middle of the week. And shuffling one more time. The final card is going to round out the week. I'm going to take a moment to make sure that they are all in the view. Okay. And they are. And as I do with the tarot readings, I always turn the deck over to see what the foundation card is that's going to inform us of the foundational energy and the basis for the week. So having done that, the card is the Five of Autumn. So this is a week where we're looking at our resources because autumn is a suit of material resources. And in particular, the Five of Autumn can sometimes represent going through some financial difficulties or some financial hard times. So there may be thoughts of worry, there may be some concern or anxiety surrounding our finances this week. For people who, like myself, are self-employed, this can be a card where we are being given a warning or a caution about self-employment. Sometimes I see this card as, money coming in cycles, or that the self-employment venture that we are engaging in runs in cycles. It sometimes is about the idea of feast and famine. So it could be like you are in a business where you may at times have lots of work coming in, and then there are other periods of time when not that much is going on. So this can be that kind of energy. Somebody may be experiencing that kind of energy with their self-employment venture. This card can sometimes be a cautionary heads up about starting a self-employment venture or making a career change. Usually this card would suggest that now might not be the good time for that. You might want to revisit that. Another aspect of the Five of Autumn for me is that we may be asked to look at what we believe about money. Autumn being the suit of material resources, like I said. 5 is a number about changes, but it's also a number that's tied in tarot for me about our belief system. So we may be inclined to want to take a look at what we believe to be true about money, or our money stories. That kind of energy, because we're being asked to look at how that conditioning or that programming or that particular belief or belief system is running behind the scenes of our experiences with money in our material lives or our career lives, things of that nature. So we're being asked to take a look at that. And not only to take a look at that, but ask ourselves the question, is that still true for us? It may have been true at one point in time, but is it a story or is it a belief that still is true now? And if not, then what can you do to change it? But the only way you could change it is first identify it and then ask yourself if that is the case, if that is still true, and if not, then what new story do you want to have in its place? The other thing about the Five of Autumn in terms of relationships, and this could not necessarily be an intimate or a personal relationship, it could just be relationships across the board. Sometimes this card can represent, you know, being on the outside looking in, or, you know, feeling out of place or feeling like you don't belong. You may be experiencing things like being given the cold shoulder, or a sense of rejection or isolation, you know, people freezing you out. Typically, that's what I see with this card, because it's usually, the scene is usually like winter. So the corresponding card that goes with this card from the Rider-Waite is the Five of Pentacles. And for those of you who may be fluent in that, you'll know that there is two people outside and the background is winter. So I usually look at that as a visual pun for, you know, being given the cold shoulder, being given, you know, the frozen out treatment, things of that nature. So it could be like somebody's experiencing that. And it could also be that we may need to consider if we want to be a part of a particular group or groups in general, because we may be needing to look at that and ask ourselves, is the energy of that group still something that we want to be a part of? So that's the Five of Autumn. So I'm going to repeat some of those things again. So for some of us, it may be we're being called to look at our relationship with money and asking ourselves, what do we believe about money? What's our money story? And is that story and that belief system still true? Because it may be operating, it may be running the show in terms of our experiences with money. If you are self-employed or you're planning on making a career change, this card is giving you a heads up. Now may not be the time for that. There may be some other things that you may need to put into place before you can make that move. And then lastly, we may be asked to look at our relationships, especially if we are not being treated in the way that we deserve, because this card is about deserving and treatment that we are worthy of. So it's about looking at our sense of deserving and being worthy. If we are being ignored or being mistreated by other people, we may need to look at that and ask ourselves, do we deserve that treatment? And if not, do we need to be in relationship or still engaging with those kinds of people who don't really treat us well, who don't really deserve to have an experience with us? So that's the Five of Autumn. The card reads, reach out to others for assistance, poor timing for a career change, and feeling challenged by money issues. And now we're going to take a look at the first card for the week, and we have the Prince of Winter. So princes in tarot can represent actual people, or they may represent an event or a situation. And since this is a general reading, I usually approach a court card like this as an approach that we are being asked to adopt. So one of the things giving with that, if it is an approach we're being asked to adopt this week to help us move forward, princes are all about focus, action, and movement. So at the beginning of the week, we're being asked to make some action, or take some action rather, to make some movement or some sort of progression. The Prince of Winter in particular is a card that represents something being done swiftly, or an action step we need to take that we need to do so swiftly. We may need to respond to something quickly. I'm seeing in my mind, you know, when you get those letters in the mail and on the envelope it has in like large red letters, immediate response required. So I'm seeing that. So there may be an issue or a concern that we need to be looking at, and we need to give it our immediate attention. It needs an immediate response. Another aspect of the Prince of Winter could be asking us to, if we normally rush into things, if we normally jump into things without thinking them through, this card is asking us to kind of rethink that, reconsider that, because sometimes the Prince of Winter jumps into a situation, and then once he's in it, he realizes that it's a situation that he can't easily get out of, or get out of quickly, because this card can represent hasty or sudden exits for me. So it could be, you know, be mindful of, if you are prone to jumping into a situation, you're being asked to rethink that. The suit of winter is about our thoughts and our mental activity, so you're being asked to rethink that, because that might not be the best solution. So on one hand, there may be situations that we need to react and respond to quickly, and on the other hand, there may be situations, if that's our typical MO. We're being asked to rethink that, take a pause. The other thing about the Prince of Winter is that there may be a situation that comes up that we're being asked to defend our beliefs about something, or defend our ideas or our ways of thinking, because the Prince of Winter for me can represent like taking on a cause that you champion, like you become a champion of a certain cause or a certain type of action. It could also be like the protector. It could also be like facing the challenges of everyday living. So it could, something along those lines. So there may be something that we have to defend, something that we have to protect. It could be a person, it could be a cause, or it could just be a belief or an idea or a concept. The other thing about the Prince of Winter is that we may be called to investigate something further. So that scenario about jumping in to something really quickly and being asked to rethink that, it could be just a matter of needing to investigate it further. So this way, when you do jump into it, you know full well what you're getting into. So that's the energy of the Prince of Winter for me for the beginning of the week. Moving to the card for the middle of the week, we have Awakening. Okay, so this is a natural follow-up to what I was saying to about that tendency to jump into something and rethink it. Awakening is a card that represents needing to have a different viewpoint or a change in perspective. And the reason is because the fairy on the card is doing a handstand, and that allows him to see his world differently than he would be if he were to be standing on his feet. So we're being asked to look at certain things differently. You know, so whatever the situation is that shows up by midweek, first we're being asked to take a pause and take a step back again, because with him doing a handstand, it can represent being inactive, or a state of inactivity, something that you are not supposed to be getting your hands in at this time, because awakening can represent something being put on hold, something being suspended, something in limbo, something of that nature. And it could just very well be because you're not being asked to take an action step with your hands or any kind of physical action. The action may be more just a line of stepping back and gaining a different perspective or a different viewpoint. Now, Awakening is also a card of sacrifice. So in the middle of the week, we may be asked to make some sort of sacrifice. And if that is true, Awakening is a voluntary sacrifice card. So it says you would be willing to make the sacrifice. Now, another thing that Awakening can sometimes represent is the idea of, when I talked about with the Prince of Winter about adopting a role or a certain kind of approach, Awakening is, sometimes having the belief or the idea that you are a martyr. Remember now I talked about, the Prince of Winter defending or championing a cause. The cause could be that you involve yourself in something in which, you take on the role of being a martyr. And then you have to ask yourself, what do you get out of that? And how does that help and empower other people around you? So it could be you just want to let go of a role that you've been playing, one that no longer serves and supports you, because now you see that it really is not serving you, serving people around you. It's not in the best and highest good of everyone around you. And so there needs to be a shift in that, needs to be a change in that. And as I'm saying that, Awakening can sometimes represent needing to accept a situation as it is. And so that may be the part where you need to have a shift in perspective. It's just about accepting it as it is. You may have been involved in something, you may have done as much as you can in a certain situation. There's nothing else you can do, and it may be that you just come to a state of accepting it, and as you accept it, you let it go, and you realize that you can only do so much, and you've done your part, and now you're going to turn it over to Spirit, your higher power, because I sometimes see this as the expression of let go and let God. So it's like you do your part, and then you turn it over to Spirit, and then let Spirit do its part. I'm seeing in my head the Serenity Prayer, and so the Serenity Prayer is acknowledging the things that you can change, and giving you courage to accept the things that you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's about that. So how can you move into a greater state of peace or come to a greater sense of serenity about the things that you cannot control? So that's awakening. It says, change the way you're looking at the situation, embrace your uniqueness, a temporary pause in the action. And as I'm looking at the sentence, embrace your uniqueness, that may be part of the reason, going back to the 5 of autumn, in which we may be experiencing this sense of isolation, this sense of rejection. We may come to a place where we accept something about ourselves, we embrace who we are, and marching to the beat of our own drum. That I'm seeing that expression, marching to the beat of a different drum. And people around us may not be able to accept that, and they may be freezing us out or giving us the cold shoulder, or however that is being expressed. And we may need to just accept, as we accept ourselves, we may need to also accept the idea that not everybody around us is going to be okay with who we say that we are going to be. And that may be the truth that we have to come to a realization and accept this week. So that's awakening. Now, moving to the end of the week, we have the 5 of winter. So we have 2 cards on each side of awakening from the suit of winter. So now the 5 of winter is a card, no mistake how this goes, 5 of winter is a card that represents setting a boundary. I always see this as drawing a line in the sand when it comes up. So it could be at the end of the week, all of those things that I said about people or being in relationship with people who are not treating us well, who are not treating us in the way that we deserve to be treated, not in the way that we are worthy of being treated. We may need to set boundaries, hard and firm boundaries with those people. And here's the thing about boundaries. I always say this when this card comes up and I'm talking about boundaries. A boundary is for you as well as it is for the other people. So when you set it, you can't be the one to cross it. If you cross your own boundary, then you're going to show people, because I'm a big believer in relationships, that we teach people how to treat us. So if you set a boundary and then you cross it, you are teaching people around you to not respect your boundaries. And that brings us right back to the 5 of autumn, because that's disrespect. And so you're teaching people on some level to not respect your boundaries because you are not able to respect them. So it's not just enough to draw the line in the sand or set the boundary. You have to be willing to maintain it. Now, the other thing about the 5 of winter, especially coming after awakening, is that this card can represent forfeiting something. So I call this the price of victory, but it also comes at a cost. So it could be at the end of the week, we may be seeing some victory, but we also have to acknowledge that there is a cost to that victory. And are we willing to pay the cost? Both awakening and 5 of winter carry the same message in terms of making a sacrifice or forfeiting something or giving it up. Now, with awakening, I said it was voluntary. 5 of winter, it may not be the case. So you have to kind of just look at that and really think long and hard about that, because I said winter is a suit of mental activity, thoughts, ideas, things of that nature. And so you have to be willing to really look at that situation and say, am I willing to make that sacrifice? Is that something I can let go? I can give up? Because the 5 of winter can sometimes be a card of defeat, resignation, that kind of energy. We don't want to put that kind of energy into something. If we want to let go of something or give something up, we want to come from a place of being empowered about it, like we're willing to do it because we know that we're going to be stronger as a result of having made that move or given that thing up, whatever it is. Now, winter is also about communication, and so the Prince of Winter on this side here is, for me, the sign of Gemini, and Gemini is the sign of communication. Here with 5 of winter at the other side of it could be that we may be needing to be mindful of how we communicate to others, because the 5 of winter is a card of bickering, of arguing, of being in situations or conversations in which, either one or both parties are feeling the need to have the last word. And so who does that serve? The idea, if that is you, take a look at that and ask yourself, how does that serve me? Or what do I get out of wanting to have the last word? For me, that is the energy of wanting to hold on to our position and wanting to be right. And so sometimes the sacrifice here with awakening could be you make a shift and you have to ask yourself, is it important for me to be right, or is it important for me to be happy? Because they may not be the same thing. And you may have to have or take a different course of action in order to have the different outcome. So if you're right and you want to hold on to your position and be right, then that may be where the quarreling and the bickering and the need to have the last word and the gloating or whatever it is, or the need to embarrass people or shame people or put people down, that's 5 of autumn energy. And so, be mindful of if you're being treated that way, you want to be mindful of making sure that you are not treating people the same way, maybe in another scenario. So, be mindful of that. Take a hard look at that. Like, do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? You may have to take a look at that. But the first thing I'm going to say with the 5 of winter, it's about really needing to draw a line in the sand and set a boundary. The card reads, walk away from dishonest associations, realizing that what you thought you wanted isn't the best choice for your happiness. And lastly, seeing something that's not worth the fight. So these are your cards for the week. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the numbers of the cards that I associate with them. And we're going to take a look to see what the lesson card is for the week from the major arcana of the deck. And now taking a look at our cards to see what our major arcana card for the week is that's serving the role as the lesson card. We have the Prince of Winter. Princes for me are valued at 12. And then we have Awakening, which is another 12. So 12 and 12 is 24. And then we have 5 of Winter. So 5 is 29. There are 22 major arcana cards in the deck. So for me, when I have a number over 22, I take the 2 digits, add them together, and that will give us our new total. So 2 and 9 is 11, and the 11th card in the deck is Strength. And so Strength, being the lesson card here, is that Strength is asking us to consider how we can stand in our own sense of personal strength this week. This card for me is about personal strength, strength of character, inner strength, things of that nature. So we're being asked to take a look at that. This card for me is about courage. It's about confidence. And so that could be issues dealing with self-confidence this week that we're being asked to look at. And also to self-esteem. And so that is a nice way of bringing us back to the 5 of autumn, especially in relationships in which we are being treated in ways that we don't deserve, and that people are not seeing our own worth and value. And so when we are needing to see that, that could affect, or if we're being treated in ways that are not worthy or not deserving, that we don't deserve that kind of treatment, then that could affect our sense of esteem and our sense of confidence. And so that could be where I was talking about setting the boundary, or setting or drawing a line in the sand rather, with the 5 of Winter. That may be the courage, or the courageous step we need to take to kind of stand in our own strength. So I'm seeing that repeated again with these other cards, the idea of strength here. So the other thing with strength here is that strength is also about being patient, being gentle, and being unconditionally loving. We on the one hand here, the fairy has the lion here, so that's all about strength. It's also about confidence, things of that nature, because the lion is like the king of the beasts, king of the jungle, things of that nature. So there's that kind of energy with it. But also too, she's holding the lamb, and so the lamb represents the gentle. So it's about, like, there may be times where we need to be strong in the sense of being like a lion, but there may be times where we need to be more gentle and more kind, more patient, more loving, like the lamb. So it's a matter of, like, balancing out the two, not going from one extreme to the other, but maybe just finding the fine line in between those. So I'm seeing that. And so here's the thing. So when we are on a quest, or we start moving to a space where we realize our own sense of worth and value, and we take a look at that, and we want to change the way that we have been experiencing our relationships, and we want to change the way that we have seen ourselves and the way other people see us to something that's more uplifting, more positive. We may need to practice being patient and gentle with ourselves as we're moving through that process of becoming stronger, becoming more confident. And also, too, we may also have to be willing to be kind and gentle and patient with other people around us. I call it, when we move through a situation, and where I call it flipping the script. And so we make a change. We flip the script, going back to awakening with the guy being upside down. We flip the script. We have to be willing to give people time to accept this new shift, this new change. And people can choose to get on board with the change, or they can choose to step off. But you have to be willing to give them some period of time to make the choice one way or the other. And also, too, going back to awakening being about acceptance, accepting whatever it is that they decide for themselves. Because here's the thing, if they don't accept you, you don't want that kind of energy in your life. You don't need that. So it may be the best and highest thing for you to just let them go. If they can't come to a place where they can accept who you are and how you want to live life and how you are asking to be treated in a way that's, respectful and, a signal of your own sense of worth and value. And if they can't be in agreement with that, then you may have to come to a place to accept that and then let them go. You remember now, because 2 of the cards said about being willing to let things go. And so that may be people. People may need to just you just need to let them drift out of your life, and because they've served a purpose, the relationship may have run its course, or, it's had its season and it's time to move on. So there may be some issues with that. So it's about being gentle, being patient, being loving to yourself, but also being willing to extend that to other people. So I'm seeing that as the strength card. So the card reads, the grace and inner strength needed to overcome challenges, the power of kindness and forgiveness, and time to embrace how wonderful you are. I'm going to say that again because this is a nice way to round out this reading. It's time to embrace how wonderful you are. So that's a strength card. So summing up, we have the Prince of Winter at the beginning of the week. So there may be a situation in which 1 or 2 things, we may need to react and respond to something quickly. We need to handle something. It needs our immediate attention, or that we may need to be mindful of jumping into a situation without thinking it through, because it may need further investigation, because once we get into it, we may not be so quick, or it may not be so easy to get out of it. That's the beginning of the week. Awakening in the middle of the week is asking us to take a look at how we're viewing things, because we may need to make a shift. We may need to have a change in perspective, a change in viewpoint. We may come to a point where we have to accept something being the way it is and then let it go, and then let spirit, whatever that is for you, however you language that in your world, to take over, that idea of letting go and letting God, whatever that is for you, you may have to practice that. You also may have to work on forgiving a situation, forgiving people involved in it, and also, too, if that's the case, be willing to forgive yourself for any part you may have played in that. So that's awakening. And then moving to the end of the week, we have 5 of Winter. At the end of the week, we may experience a situation in which we need to draw a line in the sand. We need to set a firm and hard boundary and then maintain the boundary. We may get to a point where we have to look at a situation and say, it may be time to cut our losses and walk away. I always say it's better to walk away from a situation than to remain engaged in something that is not serving and supporting you anymore. It's a better part of valor. You may have a victory, but it also may come at some cost, and you have to be asking yourself the question, am I willing to pay the price? Am I willing to pay the cost for that? So this has been your Oracle Outlook reading with the Tarot. I am James Himm Mitchell. I am signing off, and I want to thank you for joining me for this week's reading. and I look forward to sharing this space here with you again in our next Oracle Outlook together. And until then, I'm wishing you a wonderful week and take care.